We've seen in past sessions that Jesus called us to make disciples. And part of living for outward purpose or helping others pursue God, another way to say that is to make disciples. And the videos in this session will discuss that process of making disciples, which I'm just calling discipleship. By that I mean not only your own process of growing as a disciple or a follower of Jesus, but also the process by which you help someone else develop as a disciple or follower of Jesus. Now, the basic framework for doing this is laid out for us in 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 2. The Apostle Paul, writing to Timothy, his young protege, he says, "And the things you have heard me say in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to reliable people who will also be qualified to teach others." And here we see the strategy of multiplication, because multiple spiritual generations are in view here. There's Paul himself, and he's talking to Timothy. That's a second generation. He tells Timothy to entrust these things that you've heard from me to reliable people. That's the third generation, who will also be qualified to teach others. That's the fourth generation, the others. And so what we see in this idea of multiplication is that we're passing on what we've learned more than once in our lives, more than even maybe one person at a time, so that multiple lives are touched by our ministry. So the idea is not just to train others to follow Jesus, but to train others to train others. It's not just to help people understand what to believe or help them develop their own personal spiritual practices. As part of the DNA, we want to build into them the impetus to give away whatever they've gained, to pass it on to someone else in a way that those others can also give it away as well, and it becomes an unbroken chain moving forward, generation after generation after generation of people who follow Christ. So that what we hope to see is the power of exponential influence. An influence where we're not just adding one person and adding another person, but we're multiplying our influence so that it goes far beyond your own life, far beyond your own efforts, as you work it out through many, many others that come after you. So Paul told Timothy to multiply, and here's how he put that into practice himself. On one hand, he had peers, men like Barnabas and Silas, who came alongside him. And so there is such a thing as mutual discipleship. That's not necessarily multiplication, because Paul then was also intentional about training men with less experience. And we see him working in the New Testament with guys like Timothy and Titus. Timothy started as a young adult, probably not even 20 years old. And Paul noticed his potential, and he invited him to come travel with him. And over time, over the years, he gave him more and more responsibility until eventually, near the end of Paul's life, Timothy is spoken of as really a full partner of Paul in ministry. And so I want to encourage you to make this the expectation of your life in Christ, that maturity is not so much about what you know, but how much influence you have in the lives of others, extending even to a third or a fourth generation. So take some time to discuss these questions about the idea of multiplication and how it might apply in your life.